Now let's look at three sequence diagrams. They relate to holds. We have to allow members to place holds on books, allow them to remove holds. And the third thing is every day, possibly after the library closes its doors to member use, the library staff has to decide which books have holds and valid holds and decide whom to call next day to inform them that their books, their respective books have been returned and are available to them. So let's look at these three sequence diagrams. The first one is quite simple, placing a hold. This has no loop because we are placing a hold for a certain book by a certain member, and the member specifies a duration saying the hold should not be considered after a certain period. So the user interface asks for the user ID, book ID, and duration. The library should have a method called place hold, which takes those three parameters. Then this should be very routine now for you. So we have to make sure that the member exists and get the member object, because that is going to be stored in the hold object that we are going to create. Similarly, we need to make sure that the book exists and get the book object, because that also has to be stored in the hold object. And we need to verify that there is a borrower for the book. So after getting the book object from the catalog, we verify, we check, or rather we get the borrower object for that book. If the borrower is null, it means that the book has not been issued. We cannot put a hold on it. If the borrower is not equal to null, this is a guard. We are creating a hold object. See that this hold object is created here. It is not up along with the other objects. It starts its life only here. And this hold object is going to store the member, the book, and the date. And by the way, I forgot to mention this before, the parameters to the constructor would help you develop the fields for the different classes. Just as the method calls would help you determine the methods to be supported by a class, the parameters to the constructors would primarily drive the construction of the fields. Then we put this hold object in both the book and the member. This is a many-to-many relationship, as we have emphasized several times, and both the book and the member objects point to the same hold object. So see, this hold object was created, and that hold object is passed to both the book object as well as the member object through this place hold method. So they can each remember that a new hold exists, and the result is returned. Again, this could be an integer that could say whether it was successful or whether there was an error, like bad book ID or bad member ID or checked out book, not checked out book, etc. Processing holds, this occurs after, possibly after the regular hours. And what do we do here? We are having a stack of books that have been returned that day, and the system thinks there is a hold on it, hold on each one of them. So we need to decide who the first eligible member is for issuing the book. So we have a loop because there could be multiple books here to be processed. So the system asks for the book ID, and the interface simply passes it on to the library saying, process the hold for this book. As usual, the library verifies that the book exists, gets the book object, because that has to be playing a role. That book object is the central agent here, because if you go to that book object, it can tell you who has the next hold on it. For every book, there is a sequence of holds. It could be empty, but this has a sequence of hold objects, and each hold object will say who the member is, and we can get the member object from here. Because that member object is required, we need to know the phone number and name of the member so that we can display that information. You see how it flows? We get the book object, and from that we get the hold object. From the hold object, we get the member object, and we have to now remove the hold from the book as well as the member. And that can be the removal from the book can be done here, and removal from the member is done over here. Of course, it is also possible that there is no valid hold, because all the holds may have expired. That is not shown here. The sequence diagram doesn't go into that much detail. Finally, for this video, the removal of holds. We have to remove one hold, that is for a specific member and a specific book. So the actor requests to remove the hold. The interface asks for the member ID and book ID. Then we invent one more method for the library class that gets the member ID and book ID as parameter and removes the hold connecting these two. As usual, we make sure that the member is present with that member ID, and we get the book object by searching the catalog. Then we need to remove the corresponding hold objects from both the book and the member. Remember, when we created a hold, we had a hold object instantiated, and that was referred to by both the book and the member. And we remove those remove that hold object from both the book and the member by calling the remove hold method on book and the remove hold method on member. That is the end of the remove hold sequence diagram.